Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be looking at this Chinese Android head unit. Okay guys, so welcome back. We're in the car. The camera mount might wobble a bit. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. Just wanted to make a video on this new Android head unit that I've fitted in my car. I only have a single DIN space, so it limited me on what head unit I could replace the current one with. So the original head unit was just a CD player and an FM radio. There was no way to connect an aux cable to it either, so I was pretty much stuck with either CD or radio, which, to be honest, just pretty lackluster for 2024. So I did a bit of research and I did find some single DIN head units that had a screen which extended further than the single DIN slot, which at first I thought was a good idea, but as you can see in my particular car, it would have prevented the use of my drink holders as well as getting to the emergency lights, and would probably have hindered the aircon controls down here as well. So I decided it wasn't the way to go and saw these instead. The other problem is that obviously this is quite far down the center console here, so the side of my steering wheel is just here, so that's quite far down to have your screen. So this essentially became the only option. It's not an automatic screen, this is the manual screen. They do have automatic screen versions, but coming from somebody who does a lot of repairing, I can tell you now that over time that motor will fail. Yeah, it's probably not going to be a good idea for the long run to have a motorized one, much better to just have a manual one like this. So all that you have to do is pull forward on it like so. Once it stops there, if you just take the pressure off and just give it a bit of aid, it just jumps up like that. And it's held up on a spring, so if you push it forward, it does want to spring back, which is very good. Can't drop while you're driving. So the next problem that I had with my car was I didn't have an ACC live, which, if you don't know what that is, basically it is a live wire that tells these head units to come on. And so if that live wire hasn't got a live feed to it, then the head unit will not power on. Most cars will have a feed that's powered when you turn the key, but as I've said, my car just didn't have one, so what I had to do was fit a switch to emulate turning the key. So that's what I've done. If I just flick the switch, and you can just see what it looks like when it comes on. Now, it did come on quite quick that time. That's because it's in the sleep mode. You can set the sleep mode, and we'll go through those settings shortly. But what it does, when you turn it on from sleep mode, it opens up the last app that you were on, whether that was a music player or sat nav or whatever you were on. It will open that app up the moment it comes out of sleep mode. I'll just go ahead and go home and show you the home screen. So this is the default home screen for this particular head unit. So this is an Android 10, 8-core, 6 gig of RAM, 128 gig of storage. Some of them are fake Android 12 and they're actually just Android 10 in disguise. So this one is just Android 10. This is the home screen, so as you can see here, we have a little car icon here. Now if you connect the GPS antenna, which I have, then when you're driving along, that car will move. The speed of it going down that road will change depending on how fast you're going. And you'll also get a mile per hour indicator there as well. So that's quite cool. Obviously here you can set your default sat nav application. Most people will probably use Google Maps. And down here you have your music player, and obviously at the moment it's playing the radio, but I've muted it so that you can hear what I'm saying. Now I did adjust some of these icons down here for apps that I want. To get to all of the apps, you just swipe up from the bottom like that, and then the app drawer comes up like that, and you can see all the apps that are installed. The main super cool thing about it being an Android head unit is that you can then get Android apps on it directly. So you've got the Play Store pre-installed on here, and you can go and install games and apps, whatever you want on here, including, you know, your music apps, video apps. This is an area that it has an edge over the other head units because you can't beat Android for app availability. So I know the big question for a lot of you is going to be, does it support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto? And the answer is yes. The way it does that is via an emulator app. So if we swipe up here, we go across to this one here called T-Link 5. When you go into that T-Link 5, it opens up this screen. From this screen, if you connect your phone via Bluetooth to the head unit, and it is either an Apple iPhone or an Android phone with Android Auto installed and enabled, then this should detect it and it should immediately take it over. I have tried it in the past and I know that it works quite well. Out of the two, I would say Android Auto has a few issues, but I don't think they're related to this device, and it's more Android Auto in itself. We'll start off with the theme app, which for these head units, I believe the software is called TS10, I think, for this particular head unit. I've seen this set up on other Chinese head units as well. We go over to the theme app, which is essentially the stock launcher for this head unit. And as you can see here, the moment you come on the home screen, you're greeted with a recommend tab that has a bunch of different home screen styles that you can choose from. What I would say about this is, unfortunately, the majority, if not all of them, you do have to pay for. If you go over to the down arrow here, then I've got 3 there that I haven't bought any, so these are what come with the head unit itself. So that's the one we're currently using now. So if I pick this colourful card one here and I press use, then now we're back on the home screen and we're using this one. Me personally, I use a different launcher. I don't use this launcher at all. I use one called FCC launcher. It costs about £6 from the Google Play Store. In my experience, it's worth it. It's very customizable, much better than this, and you can use your own images. You can place things, but this is the stock one. This is the one that you'll be greeted with when you install the head unit. Also, another thing in theme, if you update it to the latest version, then when you go over to settings and go over to task, then what you can do is you can set some automations that will activate either when the system boots or when it comes out of sleep. So you might be thinking, why would you need to do that? With Android, sometimes for apps to work, they like to open to full screen. So if you want Spotify to 100% work every time you turn on the head unit, then I recommend you going into automate tasks and make one for open the application and Spotify and have that turned on. That's a really cool feature, especially if you were navigating somewhere via Google Maps and then you turn the car off and go somewhere for 5 minutes and come back. It will open up Google Maps again and you can carry on navigating from where you were before. So the next big important app for these head units is the settings app, which is this one here. And this is the car settings app, as they call it. Ultimately, these are the Android head unit specific settings. You can start from the top with network and select a Wi-Fi network. Obviously, that would be for if you're going to use your phone as a hotspot, which, to be honest, I recommend you do that because it means you can run things like Spotify and Google Maps directly off of this. Just the normal settings here. We've got a display brightness setting. Obviously, you can go up and down with that and change the brightness of the display. There is a day and a night mode here, and they are completely independent and different of each other. If your car has an illumination cable that communicates with the factory head unit, then you can set this brightness mode here to auto, and what it will do, it will change to day and night depending on whether your lights are turned on or not. If you don't have an illumination cable or your car doesn't support that, then unfortunately, if you set it to auto, it will stay on day mode. It will never change. So what I recommend you do is, if you're getting in the car at night time, you'd have to select night. And obviously, as you can see now, the screen's gone super dim. And it's obviously much easier on your eyes and not distracting when you're driving. But we'll just put that back to daytime. So all sorts of settings in here. Theme settings, wallpaper settings for depending on how you want the settings app to look. So under the sound settings tab, there is a fairly important setting there, which by default is turned off or closed, as they say on here, which is the speed compensated volume control. Obviously, what that means is the faster you go, the more the volume increases on its own. The settings you've got for this are weak, medium and strong. Obviously, if you have it on strong, it will increase the volume more when you drive faster. Ultimately, you'll just have to try these settings in your particular car and just see which one you need, if you need to have it on at all. So these two settings here are fairly important. So you've got sleep time. Now, if you set no sleep, then what happens is every time you turn off the ACC, or in your case it will be turning the key off, then instead of the device going into a sleep mode, it will fully shut down. What this means is it has to do a full boot up every time you turn your key in your car. Not ideal, and to be honest, I don't think it uses any less power than when it's in sleep mode. It's very, very power efficient when it's in sleep mode. So if you're concerned about it draining your battery or something like that, it's not something you need to be worrying about. So I recommend scrolling all the way down and setting the 7-day sleep. Obviously what that means is it will stay in sleep mode for a week, and if you don't turn the head unit back on within a week, then it will simply turn off, and the next time you turn it on, it will do a full boot. Most people are going to use their car at least twice a week, so you shouldn't actually have to do a full boot on it. Occasionally they do like to randomly just do a full boot. It's not necessarily a bad thing with Android. Android does kind of get a bit bogged down if it isn't restarted for a long time, so I actually think it's kind of a good thing if it does periodically do a restart. So then the next setting that's fairly important is this one here, which is the panel light setting. So this controls this LED light here. You can either click follow the headlight, which it does what it says. The panel will only come on when your headlights are on, or you can just have normally on and it will just be on all the time. Can change the color of this panel, which we will look at after we've looked through the settings. Here you've got navigation application settings. So back on that, on the home screen, I'll just show you quickly this place here. If you set a default navigation app, then it will appear in this window here. So that is this setting here, navigation application settings, and you just select one and it will appear in that place. There are a couple of other settings in the general tab down here. So we've got amplifier control. Now, if you've wired the blue cable in your harness to your car's amp, then you will need this to be open, which ultimately will send the signal wire to your amp and tell it to turn on. If you don't, then your amp won't work. This setting here, sleep display boot animation. So when you completely power down the unit and reboot it, it will display an animation when it boots for about 5 to 6 seconds. I thought that if that setting was turned on, then I would be able to see that animation when it was coming out of sleep mode, but unfortunately for me that doesn't work. Then these other settings underneath here, we've got the car battery level. So as you can see on the top status bar there, I've got that setting turned on, and it shows a little battery icon with the voltage of the car battery, which is 13.6 volts. Pretty nice thing to know. Obviously if your car is running, then that number's going to be about 14 something all the time anyway. But if you're sat in your car and you just want to know what the voltage is and you just turn in the key, then it should give you an indication of where your battery's at. And the setting underneath it is phone battery level, which, as you can see, my phone is connected, and next to the Bluetooth icon there is a battery icon, so it's about 80% full, something like that. Now, in the original tab, if your car has steering wheel buttons and you have connected them via your harness to the head unit, then you'll need to come to this setting here that says steering wheel, and once you open that up, you'll be given this screen. In order to set buttons, you have to press start first, so that it then says please select the function. Then you would press mute, for example, then you would press the mute button on your steering wheel, and then it would set it. That's the order you have to do it in. A lot of people get confused with this screen. You do have to press start first, and once you've finished, you do have to press end. So then we have reversing camera settings. Again, these are something you just want to play with, really, just have a look. If you have a particular reversing camera and you find it's not displaying, or there's some kind of distortion on the screen when it comes on, then as you can see here, reversing camera selection, you need to make sure you've selected the right format for the camera. So continuing on now to voice. Again, this is something that didn't really work very well when I was trying to set it up. I'm assuming this is selecting a assistant software, so you would select Google Assistant, for example. Might be worth having a play with if you're that bothered about having voice recognition or a voice assistant or whatever. So under the system tab, this is where you'll get certain important things like reset factory. If you had any issues with the system at all, if it was bugging out or it was crashing or something, and you wanted to just reset the thing back to factory settings, you have to do it under this tab here, and you have to select reset factory. When it asks for a password, the password is just 7890. Once you put that in and you hit confirm, you'll get a black screen and it will reboot and it will be reset. Now, there is a factory tab here. So if we select the factory tab, it will ask you for a password. Don't recommend, unless you are technical or you like to tinker around with things, I don't recommend going into the factory settings unless you really need to. But there are two different factory settings for this particular device that you can access. The passwords are as follows. So the first one is 8888. If we confirm on that, as you can see, we've now got a list of additional settings. Some of them are repeats, like for example there we've got the steering wheel setting again. We've got left peptide. Now what that means is ultimately you're setting whether you are on left hand side or right hand side drive. If you set it to left or right hand drive, it will shift these icons one way or the other just to suit the driver depending on where you're sat. Although I'm in a right hand drive car, I prefer the icon set up that way, so I've kept mine to left. But if you did want to switch them the other way, that's the setting that you use to change. Getting slightly more technical now, this is a very important setting here. So this is sleep software. So what these Android head units do is when they go into sleep mode, in order to prevent anything lagging, free up resources and stuff, what they do is all of the non-essential apps get killed. So any services that are running gets either suspended or killed. And what that means is when it turns back on again, in theory it's a lot fresher than it was before. There are some apps that don't like this to happen. For example, if you are a Tasker user and you like a lot of automation, then you're not going to want Tasker to be killed every time you turn the thing on. So if you go into sleep software here, all the apps on the system will be here, and there is a tick box on the right hand side that you can use to make sure that this software doesn't go to sleep. The other factory password that you can use is 123456. So if we go into that one, we're in factory again, but this time we have different settings. So the first one there is another important one. All these keys on this front panel have a preset function, and what you can do is you can actually set any of these keys to do something different. So for example, if we go into panel keys, we get the same screen that we got with the steering wheel setup, but as you can see this time, because obviously some of the keys are set, we've got blue ticks on a lot of these, so it works exactly the same as the steering wheel. So the next one, which a lot of people don't actually mention, but I think it's a very, very useful one, and that is this channel balance here. So this is volume for individual channels. So how these head units work, they use separate audio channels for different system apps. So for example, we've got Bluetooth calls. So when you have a call on the phone, that has got its own volume. System audio and video. Then you've got the radio, the auxiliary, and TV. So if you want to get to the more standard Android settings, then if you just hit more, it opens the regular Android settings. So the next thing I'll show you is how to change the color of this panel here. So if we swipe up from the home screen and go over to this app here called Color, we get this big color wheel on the screen. We just hit pink, for example, there, and as you can see, it's changed to pink. If I hit orange, we've gone over to orange. If I hit green, we've now gone to green. If you want this to cycle the colors, then if you just hit the middle and you keep it held for a few seconds, as you can see, it changes there, and now it's cycling through the colors on its own, and it will do that permanently. I don't recommend you do that because it's very distracting when you're driving, and to be honest, it just makes it look a little bit cheap as well. So if you want it to stop cycling the colours, then you do the same in reverse. So you just hold your finger on the middle until the lights stop cycling and they stay on one colour as they go. You can also click the centre and it will cycle between white, red, green and blue. So the next thing we'll do, I'll just go through the front panel here. So from left to right, the first thing on the top left here, we've got a home button. So you just press the home button and it will take you home whenever you want. There is also a power button down here at the bottom, and if you just press it once, then it will mute the audio, and press it again, it will unmute it. If you press and hold it for a couple of seconds, it will turn the unit off, and you can bring it back on again if you just press can hold the button again. I'm not exactly sure what that button there does. This one down here is a screen brightness button. So as you can see there, I'm clicking it, and every time I click it, it cycles through very bright, midway, and dim. So that's good for that. And then we've got obviously here previous track, next track, play and pause, equalizer, which I'll go and show you in a minute, as well as band selection engine, which band you're on the radio. We then have a TF card slot, which works very well. You can put a micro SD in here. You can load your music directly on here. We also have a 3.5mm auxiliary socket here, which is really good for if you just got a wired phone, you can just plug it straight in. We have an infrared receiver there. Now, I did buy an infrared remote that in theory should have worked with all these head units, and I couldn't get it to work. We've got two USBs here. Although they look like they're exactly the same thing, they are actually very different. The one on the left is a proper USB, and what I mean by that is if you plugged in a USB drive, you would be able to access it on here. Whereas the one on the right, it gives out power, but it does not have a data line connecting to head unit. Neither of these are very good for actually charging your phone either. Yeah, kind of a waste. And the last thing, this here is a volume wheel. As you can see, you turn it right, it goes up, turn it left, it goes down. And the click action simulates the back button. So if I just click it in, as you can see, it's gone back to the app select. So the next thing I'll show you is the equalizer, and I'm not going to change anything because I did spend quite a while setting the equalizer to how I want it for my particular car. And the app you are looking for is that one there, DSP. So if you go on that, it opens up this equalizer app, and as you can see, we have a load of preset options on the left there, and obviously I'm on the user one and go across left to right, setting everything very specifically. It's much better than the traditional car equalizer. You can also go through to surround sound, and you've got that little dot there, and you can move it around the car depending on where you want the sound to be optimized for. We've got a bass boost option, we've got another zone one, we've got the bass filter as well. So I'll also show you the Bluetooth app, as it's called. So this is the app that you use to make phone calls and to play your music from your phone via Bluetooth. So you've got your call log here, and you can make calls from your recent calls from here, and you can also delete recent calls. You've then got your contacts here, and you can set favorites so that you can just hit the favorites, and you've got a short list of favorites there, as well as this one here, which is for playing music Bluetooth directly from your phone. And then this is where you pair your phone to the car. The car will automatically reconnect to your phone every time you power it on. At the end here, you've got the settings for the device itself, so you can rename it there, and you can also set a pin, as well as setting the microphone and volume gain for phone calls. Now, this one at the bottom here, this is something that a lot of people don't know about these head units. The Bluetooth for connecting your phone is completely separate to the built-in Android Bluetooth. Now, that's going to confuse a lot of people, but what I mean by that is if you have, for example, an OBD reader that allows you to read your engine diagnostic information and it's Bluetooth enabled, then you will not be able to pair it via this screen. You'll need to go to the end here, and this option at the bottom is the one you're looking for, Bluetooth Data Service. So if you hit that, it'll give you a big explanation about why you need two independent Bluetooth chips. So if you hit go, this will take you to the Android Bluetooth setting. Just as a bonus, guys, I thought I'd show you my FCC launcher home screen setup. Quite a bit different to the stock setup, and I much more prefer this. It's way more suited to the car and to the way that I use the head unit. Yeah, awesome. So I think I've pretty much summed everything up, guys. If there's anything else you want to know about this, then you're welcome to ask me in the comments, and I'll do my very best to answer any questions that you have about it. The most important question, are they worth it? Do I recommend them? Are they reliable? So yes, I do recommend them. However, I don't recommend that you buy one of the lower spec variants. There are a lot of variants that have a 4-core processor and between 1 and 2 gigs of RAM. It's just not going to be enough. You're going to have a really bad experience and nightmare to use with such low resources. And the majority of the bad reviews that I see for these are from people who bought the really low spec versions. Android is quite a heavy operating system. So if you're gonna go ahead and get one of these, then I really recommend that you spend just a little bit more money on the spec. You want a recommendation, then go for the one I've got, which is an 8-core 6GB of RAM variant. It is a fairly good upgrade. It's completely transformed the usability of my car. I've now got sat-nav, hands-free phone, Spotify. You can even go as far as putting YouTube and Netflix on these, but you should just be very careful with those kind of things. Just make sure they're not distracting you when you're driving. Well, yeah, really, really good upgrade. I would recommend them, but as I've said, it needs to be a higher spec. Don't go with the cheap ones. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.